The next module connects the Coso elements to your institution. If you remember, the impact of Coso and the 2013 changes was really focused around improving clarity of the 5 objectives for the enhanced design and implementation of internal controls. There was also an expansion of the reporting objective to include non-financial and internal reporting. So times have changed, so let's look at each of these individual categories and what the impact could be to your institution. In the control environment, there are several questions to consider at your institution. Has your board set an effective tone at the top? Are you aware of the ethics policies or standards of conduct for the organization? Can the board and management describe their role in internal controls? Has the organization defined roles, responsibilities, and reporting lines within the organization? Do those responsibilities include internal control responsibilities at all levels of the institution? Are there defined policies and practices to attract, develop, and retain the appropriate level of talent to drive the institution meeting its objectives? And thinking about it from the TRIO side of things, asking yourself these questions as well. So possible solutions to consider. So again, ensuring that there's an ethics policy and standards of conduct, that you have an organizational chart that shows the TRIO activity and the appropriate level of delegation related to those responsibilities, and whether or not human resources is brought into the internal control conversation. So including internal control responsibilities in the job descriptions. Thinking about risk assessment, the risk assessment component. How does your institution define risk? What is the institution's approach to quantifying risk and development of a program to address these risks? What is the depth of fraud consideration for these risks by management? And again, thinking about these questions within the TRIO program itself. Possible solutions might include establishing an annual audit plan if there's an internal audit function, or again, completing a risk assessment within the TRIO program itself. Another possible solution would be facilitated sessions with the board and senior management to consider and address the risk of fraud and documenting these discussions internally. Looking at control activities, thinking through whether or not management has defined its internal controls and that they are addressing the risks that were identified in the risk assessment phase. This is especially critical on the IT side. We focus a lot on general controls, which are the controls over getting into the system at the network level, in addition to the specific controls related to the individual applications that are managing the finances and tracking the TRIO grant activity. And then of course, we love documentation. So does your institution have documented policies that talk through at an organizational level as well as at the TRIO level? So some possible solutions to consider are performing a control self-assessment. This is especially critical for any type of grant management and also often can be facilitated by a risk assessment session. Again, continuing to monitor the documented policies and manuals at the organization level and within the TRIO grant program, and then considering documenting the flow of critical information through a flow chart. When considering information and communication, looking at how the organization utilizes reports. Are the financial and performance reports produced reliable? This is especially critical when you have required reporting related to the TRIO grant itself. How is the information developed by the organization or the department get utilized by the staff that receive the reporting? Does the institution address the issues that may impact the external parties? So again, performing a self-assessment, testing of key reports, and defining the types of information that should be communicated at the various levels. For monitoring activities, just a little bit more consideration related to how the institution monitors the effective operations of internal controls. Does your institution utilize an internal audit function to monitor internal controls, or are those pushed down to each of the departments themselves? And then what is in place by management to address internal control deficiencies and control failures? Some solutions might include working together with internal audit to review and monitor the results of internal audits, including the mitigation of internal control deficiencies and control failures, or shifting some of the job responsibilities and moving them around in order to mitigate the risks that were identified. Utilization of software to monitor high-risk transactions, and then again back to the communication and monitoring of the board or the audit committee, and if there's an internal audit department as well. This concludes the Coso Module 4.